Greetings, it's AlphaStorm here, and welcome to a brand new tutorial series of sorts. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be sitting on this footage for. Maybe my sound has changed by the time this is coming out, but if it hasn't changed by the time this is coming out, and it's coming out sometime within the next few months, then this is the most up-to-date tutorial that I could possibly give you. So, I'm going to be basically explain to you guys how I go about recording and making all the weekly covers that I've been doing for the past almost year. If you want to know how it is that I go about doing recording and ways that you yourself can get into recording, this is a good place to start, as is a lot of the rest of the internet. Before we get into the actual recording part, we have to talk about a couple things. Specifically a few things that you're going to need. Let's start going through everything that we need. First off is a computer with speakers. I say a computer with speakers, that includes laptops. You can make great music on a laptop. You can even make great music with a phone, which is something I'm still wrapping my head around to this day. Even if you have a desktop computer, get some pretty decent speakers. The set that I use, they're Logitech Z323s or 232s. I think they're 323s. They come with a subwoofer, which means I can hear the bass very clearly, so that's a very good thing to have. You don't need a subwoofer though. You can even mix on headphones. I prefer to mix out with just monitors. That's how I'm going to be doing my mixing, but if you want to mix with headphones, then that can work too. The second thing that you're going to need is an audio interface, which this is my Line 6 UX2. An audio interface just takes what it is that you're doing analog with like a microphone or a guitar getting plugged into it, and it just turns it into a digital signal that the computer can read. There are plenty of good cheap audio interfaces out there. This runs about $130, but you can also get the Pod UX1, which is basically the first edition of this, and you can get pretty much the same sounds out of it. But you can also find some really good stuff like the Scarlett stuff, the Focusrite stuff. There's some really good cheap audio interfaces out there, you just have to find them. The next thing you're going to need is an amp and cab and a microphone, or an amp sim. Take your pick between each. They both have their perks. The amp and cab and microphone route can give you a realistic sound because it's a real amplifier. An amp sim can make the whole process easier, but it can sound a bit digital. If you buy a Line 6 UX2 or UX1, it comes with a disc and a download for Pod Farm, which is what I'll be using. You can actually see it on screen right now. It is a pretty decent amp simulator program. And then the next thing you're going to need is a DAW, or a digital audio workstation. What is a digital audio workstation, you ask? It is where everything you're going to be doing for recording is going to live. Examples include Mixcraft, FL Studio, Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools, Reaper, fucking FL Studio, I already said that. Propellerhead, Reason, anything you can think of. If it specifically labels it as a DAW, then it is something that you're going to want to look into. The best free one that you can use, even though it has a trial, or at the very least the cheapest one that you can use, is Reaper, which comes with some great built-in plugins and is very, very cheap if you want to actually buy a license. I'll be using Cubase. The fundamentals are largely the same. Now for the last and most important part, and that is if you're going to be doing metal mixing, guitars, which are over there, and I don't know if I'll be including B-roll. If you're going to be doing metal and stuff, you're going to need the guitars. They're very important to have. I will say, before you go out and buy a really expensive guitar, or save up to buy a really expensive guitar, you don't need lots of really high-end equipment to make music. I started out with free plugins and a free version of Mixcraft, and it actually sounded pretty good at the time. The only reason I have much more expensive gear is mostly out of desire. a lot of this stuff you can find much better and cheaper alternatives. But you don't need really expensive gear. All you need is, at the very least, even if you're not even going to be using real guitars to record, you can find some great free VST like drawing MIDI notes to use. All you really need is the computer, the interface, if you're going to be doing real stuff, the amp and cab combo with the microphone or an amp sim, a DAW, and if you're going to do real instruments, the guitars. But again, 2 of those you don't even technically need. You don't need an audio interface unless you're going to be using other gear like this. So that's the most important stuff that we need to get out of the way first. If you're going to be recording using real instruments, you can find some really nice and cheap gear on places like Reverb, and you can probably find it at some thrift shops or pawn shops. Anywhere you look, you can probably find something that would do the job. But with that said, that pretty much covers this whole first section. So let's get into the second section, which is the tones. So I'm going to run you through the rhythm guitar and lead guitar tones that I'm going to be using. You don't have to use the exact tones that I'm using. In Pod Farm, everything is, well, there's a lot there, even with the basic versions of the program. But I will be using a lot of the sounds that I already have. Do not use this as a guide for how you should design tones. Use it as a guide for how to get started doing tone design. Everything in between is up to you. So with that said, let's get into it. So this is Pod Farm. Ooh, wow, so Pod, very farm. I'm going to start running through the rhythm and lead guitar tones that I will be using specifically. I'm not going to cover the bass tones that I've been using, nor the clean guitar tones or the acoustic guitars, specifically because they're mostly outsourced. My clean and bass tones, they come from CSGuitar89, and my acoustic guitar plugin is a pretty much pre-installed plugin in Pod Farm. So I'm just going to talk about the rhythm guitars and lead guitars. So let me pick up a guitar. This will be what I'm using as my rhythm guitar. It is a Spectre C6 Deluxe, which is, well, has been my rhythm guitar for a very long time. It's honestly one of my favorite guitars, and it plays great. So let's start going through these guitar tones. So. Yep. I personally have 2 rhythm guitar tones. One is going to go in the front. It's going to be the main guitar tone that you hear. The other one is to fill out the space and make the rhythm guitar as a whole sound fuller. So let me run you through the settings that I use for my rhythm guitars now. This is the main crunchy one, as you can see here. I'm using the Line 6 Big Bottom, which I think comes with a $50 expansion pack for Pod Farm. So if that interests you, I think it was just called Metal or something. I don't remember off the top of my head. But let's start going through it. So when you're going to design tones, in fact, actually, I'll do you one better. I'll design a tone pretty much from scratch now. When you're designing a tone, you're going to want to use something that you think sounds good. Like I said, I'll be using the Line 6 Big Bottom, but let it hiss. We'll get to that later. We're going to ignore the settings of this for now and look at the cabinet. Now this is pretty much how your sound gets out into the air, how you can hear the wiggly air. Pretty much, if you don't have a cab, the amp sounds like this. It's not great, so you need a cabinet, and it ends up sounding like this. So you have a lot of different options for amps and cabs you can use, even bass cabs if you're interested in that. For my main rhythm guitar tone, I was using the 4x12 tread plate. I think I had an on-axis 57. These are different microphones you can use. Mess around with how these sound and see what you like most. Which is pretty cool, but I'm basing it off of the 57 on-axis. And set the room, I like to have the room pretty much where it already was. So, learn now. Low gain on your rhythm guitars will save you a lot of grief. If you have high gain rhythm guitars, that can make it hard to do mixing later. So, lower gain, 45%, that's about where I have it. The bass also a little bit lower. You can find some sources that say you need a little bit higher bass in your rhythm guitars, but I personally don't. I don't think it sounds good. Now the mids, if you scoop these out, you'd pretty much just get early 80s Metallica stuff. A lot of the guitar's tone is based on the mids, so you're going to want to have the mids up pretty high. The treble so that it cuts through, you're having it, the treble and presence so that the guitar cuts through, you have it fairly high. And when all is said and done, this is what you end up with. Pretty good, and have the volume at about 70. Pretty good stuff. Alright, next thing you're going to want is a distortion. This is actually more just to give a bit of a boost to the tone and give it a bit more high end. A little bit of crunch. The screamer is what I use, with 65% on the drive and 35% on the gain with the tone still directly in the middle. That gives you this sound. But you may notice this hiss. It's not good. So, what you're going to do, noise gate, right there. The noise gate is under dynamics. So, have the noise gate set relatively high, like about 40 dB. You get a pretty nice tone with very little hiss. Pretty much like that. Next, you're going to add a bit of EQ. Throw that on the end. I should have prefaced this initially. A lot of this came courtesy of CSGuitar89 as well, a lot of what I've been doing. I did make a few changes to the sound that I had, specifically with the amp being different, and I made the change of the bass being a bit lower. But with this EQ at 100 hertz on the A band here, you boost it by 4 dB, and at 4000 hertz, which is 4.0 kilohertz KHZ, you boost that by 2 dB, which gives it a bit of high-end crunch and low-end boom. Which sounds pretty cool. Alright, next thing is to put on a reverb. I like to use the medium hall reverb. Well, now that I've exposed myself that this is coming courtesy mostly of CSGuitar89, he specifically used this reverb with these settings. I think it was those specifically. And you don't want too much reverb on your rhythm guitars, otherwise you risk losing any depth that the rhythm guitar had in the first place. So you end up with a sound that pretty much sounds like this. There you go. And the last thing, and a lot of people think this is sacrilegious, but if you look up at the top, at the out up here, I guess not then. I guess there is no reason to have a compressor, but I like to have it on anyway. Set the compressor pretty much there. That's pretty much it for the main rhythm guitar. I won't run you through how I designed my second rhythm guitar tone. I will say all it has is just a bit more bass to it, and that's about it. So if you want to design a tone like that, see if you can figure out something on your own. I will also run you through one of my two lead guitar tones, specifically lead guitar 1, because that's my C1FRS tone, and that's the guitar that's near me. The same principles apply, pretty much. If you must know, I am using a Spectre C1 Apocalypse FRS, which is one of the first runs of the Spectre Apocalypse line. Great guitar, fun for leads, that's mostly what I use it for. But there's this, and I also have my MH350 from LTD over there, and that's what I use as my other lead guitar. So I'll run you through my lead guitar. The same principles apply, I'll just run you through everything that's different. So, for starters, there's no screamer here. And that's because we don't want to over-distort the lead guitars. That, and also it's a bit higher gain, so that it really just has a little bit more zest to it. Fun stuff. For lead guitars, despite anything you may see, lower the bass a lot. You don't want a lot of bass because even if you add a lot of bass, it's just going to end up being cut out and mixing anyway. It makes the whole mix really muddy, so cut out the bass. Higher mids, you don't want too much treble and presence because it can be a bit ear piercing, and the volume again at about 70. For cab, I'm using the vintage 30s, the Celestian vintage 30s based cab, which is one of the flagship cabinets in pretty much everything. And in comparison to the tone that we had before, this is what it sounds like. A little bit more high-end punch. Compressor, not really doing much, it's just a gain boost mostly. The delay is the main effect that's being added here, which versus. It's a little bit dull, so you add delay, and pretty much after the you get a nice delay effect as it fades away. These are the settings I'm using again. You can find this on CSGuitar89's tutorial on his tones. And the last thing is we're using a different reverb, the cavernous reverb, which it pretty much largely the same. but it just makes the lead sound a little bit fuller. So. So that's my lead guitars, pretty much. Fun stuff. All right, so that does it for tones, pretty much. Yeah, that pretty much does it for tones. In the next part, we'll go through in the next section of this video, we'll go through how I decide what song I'm going to do, and writing and arranging the drum and other tracks that I decide to add in. So let's get to that now. So the next part of our little journey here in making music is to, well, first of all, figure out the song that we want to do. I've already chosen the song I'm going to do, but you can go searching for any video game song or pretty much any song ever you might want to do. Now, I've got an issue, which is that I've got two DAWs set up to do different purposes. Right now, what I'm doing, assuming I do decide to cut to the footage now, is I'm aligning, well, I'm trying to figure out what the tempo is of the track I'm doing, which is Puzzle Swap, the Puzzle Swap music. So remember that. You can attempt to find out the tempo on your own. You could probably get into the ballpark with just your ear and like a metronome on your phone, because you can get free metronome apps pretty much anywhere you go. Anyway, the next DAW that I have is Cubase, which is what I used to do recording in. Like I said, this is what I do my main recording in, so I'm going to drag the MP3. You can find plenty of free MP3s online, plenty of decent enough websites. Anyway, so we have our track, but it's the original track. So what do we do, I hear you ask? Well, let's get drums set up. Now, if you're going to do metal, you don't need the drum machine that I'm going to be using. Toontrack's Superior Drummer is excellent, but you should work up to it instead of using it outright. It is a very expensive plugin, and there are plenty of good softwares just pretty much built into about every DAW you could possibly find. But I'm going to be using Superior Drummer, however the same rules apply, and I'm going to be using, I think it was this one. I guess that one. There we go. Okay. So yeah, again, you can find a good drum machine pretty much built in. And this is assuming you don't have the space to store drums and record with drums. If you can't record with drums and don't have enough space to store the mics and the drum kit itself, drum machines work perfectly fine. So, what we're going to do is we're going to draw out a MIDI track. Okay, we should probably arrange this a bit first. For arranging, you can slice up the track however you want and arrange it in your own way. I haven't done that a lot in the past. I find it difficult to do so. I struggle to come up with ideas. A lot of fun stuff. So I'm gonna speed up the process of arranging everything. Okay, it just loops from there. Okay, so I can pretty much snip it up however I want from here. Try to make it about 2 minutes long. Yeah, that works. Okay, so we have our arrangement. I'll be back 1 second. Yeah, it allows me to charge while recording. Cool. Alright, that's our arrangements. Now, whoops. The next thing to do is to write the drum track. Now, the way that you can get to the drum editor in Cubase is you can click on this MIDI thing up here and then click Drum Editor. And it opens up this window. I'm going to throw that over there so that I can show you how I'm going to write my drums. I just find it easier to have separate windows. So, for this track specifically, I happen to know that it has an 8th triplet feel. That sort of 8th triplets sound. So, with this in mind, you can go 16th triplets as well. How do I want to open this? If you want to do a flam, which is 2 hits to create that ba-doom kind of sound like this. You can create 2 hits like this, and the second one you just have to lower its velocity, which is how hard it's hit in terms of MIDI. If you're doing this with regular drums, it's fine and you can do it however the hell you want. Depending on what software you're using, you won't have this specific drum editor and you have to rely on the keys, like the actual MIDI keyboard thing. Find where the sounds that you're looking for are, which will be the kick and snare. They'll usually be around C1 and D1 and etc. Find where the kick and snare are, which are 2 drums. It's kick and snare. And just design off of that. Also make variations in some degree. You don't want it to all be one drum beat. I usually go silent when I'm doing things like this because I'm focusing. It can be a long process to make a drum track like this, so expect it to take a long time. So into speed up mode. I'm gonna interject here. Don't be afraid to take breaks, by the way. If it comes to it and you're starting to feel a little tired, take a break. You should come back to the project and actually finish it. Otherwise it won't get done and you won't release anything. And another thing, I'm not going to run you through how I designed these drums. If you're not sure where to start, use a preset and see what you can get with it. Hello, we're back. New day. More time to make ourselves a drum track. How were we last night? Now we have our drum part figured out. I will likely be adjusting it during like editing or recording, but right now this is what we're with. So the next part of our journey is to do some practicing. Practice the parts that you're going to play. This includes practicing all the lead parts. Now here's the thing, I know pretty much all the leads to this song already. But I'm still going to practice them, because for when I record them and I do live takes, it'll be a little bit easier for me to play them live. Something to that effect. Practice to a metronome as well. fun stuff. It's not a hard song at all. Fun stuff, just practice the hell out of it, you're going to need to. But after that comes, well, we're going to have to make the actual audio tracks. Making audio tracks is different between DAWs. In my case, I just go up to this, if you're using Cubase, you go up to this plus here, click on audio track, and then you can enter the name. I'm going to enter names. I'm going to have 3 bass tracks, bass low, bass mid, and bass high. And then 4 rhythm guitar tracks. And 4 lead guitar tracks. That's pretty lowballing for the sort of stuff that I end up doing. With this, then you can get to the point where you can start recording, which pretty much that will be done for the next part. We're done with sitting at the computer for right now, unless you're going to be sitting at the computer and doing lead guitars. Next thing is to do the video recording, or at the very least that's the order in which I'll be doing this. Anyway, let's get to that. Alright, we're standing for this next part because we're going to be getting to doing video recordings. There are a number of ways that you can do video recordings. The first of which is to do it music video style, which is you do the recordings before you start doing the video, and then when you get to the video you have a track that you play to, and you basically just make one of those, you know, a music video. Like you can see like people like FamilyJules, Jonathan Young, Rashadi B, they do music videos like that. However, what I decided to do, and is honestly a lot easier to get into the swing of, is to do live recordings, which is essentially you're recording into your DAW and you're also recording your video at the same time. It's a lot easier to do it that way. It doesn't give you as much flexibility with how you're going to, you know, shoot your music video, but it makes the process a hell of a lot easier. I'm going to be treating this as if it's a regular one of my music videos, one of the regular pieces of content that I upload. There are a number of different things you can do live takes as well. If you have 2 different guitar parts, i.e. you're recording 4 times like I do, you can either record 1 rhythm guitar track or record 2 at 2 different angles. I did that for the first 5 months of 2020, and that was hell. I don't recommend you do that unless you just want different angles. If you don't care about that, then you can do 1 angle per guitar, and like 1 angle per different section. So I have 1 for my rhythm guitar, 1 for my bass tracks, and then a few for my leads and other things that I decide to include. It really just depends on what you want to do. The way that I'm going to be doing this project is, well, it's actually a pretty simple project. So before we get into doing the actual recording, if you've done practicing, clean your guitar and clean yourself. You want to make the instrument and yourself presentable to the camera. That may seem like a really weird judgment to make, but you absolutely want to have cleanliness. Like if you have a guitar that's dirty, you just look like a slob. And if you don't look clean and like your hair is a mess, unless you explicitly design it that way, then you're just gonna look like a slob. So at least make yourself presentable to appear on camera. And also, the guitar is the most important part, not you. If you're playing the instrument and the instrument goes out of frame but you don't, that pretty much drags away from the actual point of the music video, which is the music. You're just kind of a byproduct that happens to be involved. Anyway, with that, I'm gonna get to doing some video recordings. By the way, it has been a little while since I last recorded anything for this tutorial series. I put up foam panels and I put up wall hangers. So that's that. Anyway, for real now, let's get into recording. Alright, something else I should mention, once you finish doing recordings, take a break. We're gonna need it, like, desperately. So take like 30 minutes to an hour, take some time to recoup, because you're gonna be ear fatigued is what it's called. Basically, you don't, like, your ears have been listening to something for so long that you start to lose track of what's actually happening. So take a break, and then come back. Also take a break if you're feeling tired at all during the recording process. This can include after you've recorded all the video parts. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, here we are back in Cubase and OBS mode. So we're going to do some mixing. Now, I've taken the liberty of recording all the other parts that I need to include before I started recording this, and those include 2 other bass tracks, because the bass on its own sounds like this. And then the other bass tracks added, you get this. It's going to require a bit of mixing so that you actually get a decent sound out of it. But as it stands for right now, this is the sound that we're ending up with. Yeah. Okay, 1 second please. Alright, so that's all my bass stuff. I've also taken the liberty of recording the 3 other guitars that I need, which were basically just 3 other rhythm guitars. So with the entire suite of rhythm guitars, you get a sound that's pretty much a wall of noise and sounds like this. Not exactly the clearest recording, but we'll fix it. And the last thing I wanted to do was record some dubbing. Basically, I'm just recording the part an octave down, so together both parts sound like this. That will help the lead guitars to sit in the mix a bit better. I did it in very specific points, at least points where I thought they would be useful, and that's pretty much all I did other than fixing a few little errors I had in recordings. Now let's get started on the mixing process. So the way that we're going to do this in Cubase is we're going to have every single channel, and I can just select every channel. You may have to do it like 1 channel at a time depending on what program you're using, but I can just select every channel, press Alt and Shift, and I can just drag all of the volumes all the way down. That's what we have to do. So, that is part 1 of this. I'm going to take this and put it over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix these in so that this right here gives us 6 dBs of headroom. Now I'm lucky that these meters all show like how high in gain it's gotten to, just based on the volumes. So I need to mix this so that everything is at, well, adds up to 6 dBs of gain reduction. We're gonna go drums, bass, rhythm guitar, and other percussions and leads. So we're gonna start with the bass. Now don't turn everything up too much. You don't need a lot of volume yet. We're gonna add that later. So starting with the drums. Right about there should be good. I know it's really, really quiet. I can turn that up. And then we're going to start mixing in the bass. Now I need to turn this up. Now in order to decide how much volume you have on the lows, the 3 different bass tracks, you don't have to do 3 bass tracks. Just the way that I did it was to give it a little bit more character, and also a little bit of extra saturation. But what you can do is you can actually you can duplicate the single bass track, and you can add in some distortion saturation. FamilyJules has a great tutorial that pretty much explains how that works. But for my purposes, I have three differently recorded bass tones. So I just need to solo out the 3 bass tracks, and we're going to mix them all in. Here's the mids on their own. And with everything. As you can see, we're still at negative 12.5 dB. And now we're going to get to the rhythm guitars. So these you need to be very careful with how you mix them, because the way that we're going to mix them in, it's going to add in a lot of volume. So just bring it up to about there. So what we're going to do is we're going to pan these differently. This first one, we're going to pan 50% to the right. This one, we're going to pan 50% to the left. And what that does is it basically makes it sound like this. It's a little bit bigger. And then we get to mix in our other 2 rhythm guitars. So solo out all the rhythm guitars and then have fun. And these ones, what we're going to do is we're going to pan them completely to the left and right. There's a very subtle difference, but pretty much if you solo and unsolo things, you should hear a difference between the 2. This one's a bit fuller, so we're going to keep that. And then, let's get to the snaps, why not? They look like they're clipping, but they're not. Okay. But, just in case, what I'm going to lower this by 10 dB. Well, maybe 5. Well, 7.5 should work. There we go. If it's clipped already, that sucks. So... still at minus 12, thereabouts. Alright, now we get to bring in the lead guitars. So, start with this one. Sorry about that works. And we're going to put this one at the exact same level. Simply because it's basically the same guitar. And what we're going to do is we're going to take both of these lead guitars and we're going to pan them both about 40% to the right. And we're going to take lead 3 and we're going to pan it 40% to the left. And with mixing in harmonies, because these are 2 harmony guitars, mix them so that you can hear both guitars, but the main actual lead part that you want, the main melody, is in the forefront. So one guitar is going to be quieter than the other. And when mixing dub guitars that are like an octave down, keep them panned in the middle and just... right there should work. In fact, even there should work. Maybe the bass is a little too loud actually. Okay, cool. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add in another new track. Now what this is going to, it's going to be an effects track. It's basically a bus. It's going to be for room reverb, so that the reverb, like the entire recording gets a reverb sound. Now, I cannot tell you how reverb works because I don't know how reverb works. But what I do know is you're going to want to have a lot of reverb. Like a lot of reverb. And it'll create a new track here. You can figure out like bussing and stuff, because that's how you're supposed to do reverbs like this, or like creating sends. I'm not going to run you through entirely how you're supposed to do this, but I will say, don't send the bass. Don't send the bass to the reverb channel. Only send all the other instruments. It's just because the bass is supposed to be kept sounding like the foundation of the track. So, turn on all these sends and, well, we're going to have to now bring up the reverb track. That's what it would sound like if I had it up that high. The best place to test this stuff out is like at the end of the track, like this. Get a nice echo as it fades away. Alright, so that's pretty much it for setting all this up. So we got everything now into the mixing. Like, everything is mixed into where it should be. Now it's really quiet, so we're going to find ways to fix that. Don't worry about the rest of the sends for now. So we're going to mix these, well, we're going to start adding effects. Now I'm just going to cut in here. This is AlphaStorm from the future. I wanted to redo this section of the video because my explanation of how I added effects to all the tracks was terrible. I barely explained anything with it at all. So I'm going to redo it here now so that you get a better explanation of how the effects work. And I'm even showing it to you with the already finished track. So, let's get through it. We're going to start by looking at the drums. Now, since I recorded this cover, my like the way that I've set up my sounds has changed a lot. I specifically said it that I did change up my bass tone a little bit, and there's a lot of other mixing stuff that I've done differently ever since I shot those parts of the video. So I'm actually going to run you through the bits I did differently, starting by readjusting the ordering of everything. Alright, so let's start going through everything. We've already talked about the reverb track, that's fine. I suppose I should also discuss sends properly. With the way that music works, you can create, you can route, like specifically in Cubase, you can route tracks to other tracks. Like if I wanted to, I could route this into the effects track and then just go straight out. Or I can do it as a send or a bus. And I don't know why any of these terms are called what they are, they just are. So, in FL Studio it's a lot easier. I might throw up some B-roll of that, but it's a bit different depending on the DAW that you're in, but you can create mix buses and stuff like that. I don't know how it is for every single DAW, so you're going to have to look it up on your own, because there are so many DAWs out there and so many different things that people can use that I don't want to cover it all in one video. So, that's fine. Now let's get into the drums, and I'll turn off the master stuff for now. This is what our drums sound like normally. Let me turn this up. gonna have to remember to turn that down later when I add back on the other things. It's really quiet, and I know that. So we're gonna start with an EQ. Okay, the purpose of an equalizer or an EQ like this is it's to basically take out frequencies that you don't want to be including in your track, i.e. if you, well, things like at 500 hertz, because there's a lot of stuff there and it gets rid of presence and stuff like that. The way I have this set up, courtesy again of CSGuitar89 in his mixing tutorials, is I boosted the low end to bring out the kick. Just give it a little more low end punch. 162 hertz is to specifically center on like the main frequency of the kick. Then I'm gonna pause this. This 500 hertz cut right here. This is what I was talking about with presence and like anti-presence, as I like to call it. Again, from Jules actually, FamilyJules 7X, and his tutorial series. So this is pretty much to take out some of the frequencies that they're often called boxy frequencies. They just kind of make the tone of the instrument sound like it's trapped in a box. So if you cut out 500 hertz or like cut out a large majority of the mid-range, you get rid of that sort of sound. Be careful with how you do this, because if you have a really wide EQ like this, you risk pretty much losing most of the character. So something like that, and if you turn it off. Very subtle change. Now, I've got these out of order. I do that a lot. I will put frequencies out of order, but this one, band 6, is set to 9,000 hertz, thereabouts, 9.5K. And what this is doing, it's a notch frequency, and it's just taking out some of the high-end hiss that you can get from drums, like with the cymbals and stuff. If I were to turn this off, this is the sound you get. Cut out a little bit of that high end, it makes it sound a little bit muffled, but it also tames the cymbals a little bit. Next up is, here we have a 2000 hertz, a 2.1K hertz boost. This is mainly to focus on the snare, because the snare that I have is mostly living in that area. And the high shelf is to give it a lot of high-end punch. Like that. Next up we have a compressor. Now, I cannot tell you how a compressor works, because even after all this time of using compressors, I still don't fully understand it. What I do know is that it takes really loud sounds above a certain threshold and it turns them down so that it's level with everything else. Now the issue with that is you say that to newer musicians and they don't know what that means or how to use a compressor. If I may make a suggestion with this, in that case, there is a website called Musician on a Mission that gives out a free mixing PDF set. I've got it and I've shared it with a whole ton of people who, I say a whole ton, it's like one person. I've shared it with one person who I thought might like it, and they did like it, so you can definitely check out Musician on a Mission. They got compression stuff in there and like other EQ stuff. Also, another thing you may want to look into is a lot of Spectre Sound Studios tutorials on stuff like this, specifically the compression stuff. I think it's called How to Use a Compressor. Glenn from Spectre Sound Studios does a fantastic job describing this. I would suggest you go check out his stuff if you want really good mixing tutorials. Otherwise, I can't really help you very much here, because I still don't fully understand this. If I were to turn this off, it makes it a little bit tighter. It's just to make the drum sound a little bit tighter is mostly what it is. that's pretty much it for this. And then the last thing we have is a reverb. This is just to give it a little bit more character, and also make it sound bigger, etc., etc. Let's go to the end. That'll be the best place. Very subtle, but it's in there. Now the next thing is the bass, and I'm going to say it now. As I had said in text in the in the last section of this, I have made adjustments to my bass sound specifically because, and I'm going to point it out really quick if I can find a good example. There we go. That's a good example right here. That ticking, that is the sound, because my bass has active pickups, and that's the sound of the magnets within the pickups pulling on the strings, and it just creates this really bad ticking sound, or clicking sound, or whatever you want to call it. So I have lowered my strings since. It gave me a much better mix. So if you have active pickups like I do, make sure your pickups are a far enough distance away from the string so you don't get that clicking. You'll know if you have active pickups if there is a battery compartment on the back of the guitar. So, with that in mind, I'm going to attempt to explain mixing for this track specifically, for the bass stuff, as much as I hate how the bass sounds. So the main bass here the main bass EQ, it looks like this. I'm going to turn off those. Pretty much what this is doing is it's mainly focusing on all round, but particularly the low end because it's a bass guitar. This is mostly in the sub stuff, so you're barely able to hear this, but it can create muddiness if you're not careful, so that's what this is for. Also, for that finger noise, I've boosted up some of the higher end frequencies, taken out 500 Hertz again, and actually taken out 2000, because another bad frequency can live there if you're not careful. And I'm actually gonna get another EQ here to show you something. With EQ, what you can do is a thing called sweeping, frequency sweeping. And basically what this is you can, as the track is playing, sweep through, excuse me, and listen for bad frequencies, like right there was one. Just as an example, I'm not going to keep that, because this cover's already released, so. Anyway, regardless, that's frequency sweeping, and you can use that to find bad frequencies and like listen for things that you may not find glamorous. Anyway, next thing is the compressor, which is actually designed specifically to compress the ever-loving fuck out of the bass, because we want it to be tight. We want it to be tight. We like the tightness. You're going to want to be careful though, because you can lose some character. But like that. Anyway. Next thing, we have the mid-bass stuff, which specifically the EQ looks like this. Its entire purpose is to focus on the mid frequencies, because this bass is going to be taking out those mid frequencies. So we've pretty much cut everything to these frequencies right in the middle. When you pair it with the bass, creates a little more definition in those mids. And the compressor, I believe, is the exact same. Yeah, it's exactly the same. And then the last thing is the highs. And this bass is just focusing on the higher frequencies. Like such. And again, the compressor is the same. So we put everything together. as such. So for the main rhythm guitar, the effects are exactly the same for the rhythm guitars. You can copy effects over, like I have done here. The rhythm guitars are the exact same effect chain, the first two anyway. So what I've done is I've cut this up to about 100 hertz. Take out a lot of the bassiness, specifically because with that bassiness it can interfere with the bass guitar and make it sound a bit muddy. Bit muddy, it doesn't sound great. So you take out pretty much where the bass is mostly living and you get a really nice sound. Cut at 502K again, and then if there is one thing I have done differently, I do use a high shelf instead of a cut like this, specifically because that way I don't actually just need to do stuff like this and I don't waste frequency bands. But that's pretty much it for those, for the EQ. The compressor, very subtle. It's mostly a gain boost, actually. And then reverb again, it's actually the same reverb preset that was over here, if I remember correctly. No, actually it's slightly different. Well, whatever the case. Now, there is one other thing that I am doing differently, and that is, I instead do my rhythm guitars like this. I don't have a fourth rhythm guitar anymore. I'm only doing it in sets of 3. I know I said earlier that I was doing it in sets of 4, but if you don't think you're comfortable enough to do 4 recordings of the same thing over and over and over again, do 3 or even 2. I did 2 for a little while with my my covers in 2019. So I've gotten rid of these other rhythm guitars, but I'm gonna leave this as they were because the cover's already out. Okay, please. And for the backing rhythm guitars, we have a little bit of a bass boost. Cut to about the same place, but there's a little bit of bass boosting. And compression, again, very subtle. Mainly used as a volume booster, but it's incredibly subtle. For the snaps, it's pretty much just following the same thing as the drums, except for the fact that I've pretty much just cut it down to the points where it really matters. And I've cut out a lot of the background noise that I had while recording it, so. And again, compression, like so. To lead guitars, and the lead guitar preset for everything that I have that is a lead guitar, regardless of the guitar it's on or the tone it has, is exactly the same. And it looks like this. This is the EQ for it. You've cut up pretty much everything that's actually in the low. You're actually getting up into like the mid-range for it. Specifically because, again, with those bass frequencies, it can make things very muddy in a hurry. So regardless of it thinning out, it's actually good to have it like that. If the guitar is thin, then everything else has their space to breathe, and you won't even notice how thin it is in a full mix. With compression, again, subtle, mainly to be used as a volume booster. And then that's it for that. Now I gotta turn down the volumes, because we're gonna throw on the master stuff. Now there is another thing that I've done differently that I've decided on. This is how okay, we're back up a little bit, brain. You're gonna start with mixing on, well, mastering. This is mastering at this point. But what you're going to start with is you're going to start with a multiband compressor. and a spectrum analyzer. Now, what each of these does, I'm going to turn off ozone really quick. What these do is, the multiband compressor, it's basically a compressor but for multiple different frequency spectrums. So for example, this low frequency band here is from 20 Hz to 111. This middle one is from 111 to 2.04K. This one here is from 2.04K to 9.68K. And then this one here is from 9.68K to 20K. Now the reason they stop at 20 on each side is because that's pretty much where the thresholds of human hearing are. Below 20 Hz and you really barely hear anything, and above 20K you're getting into dog regions, and we can't hear dog whistles, so that's that. But the rules of compression are pretty much exactly the same. You just have to treat it in the different frequency spectrums. And the spectrum analyzer, it just shows you what the spectrum looks like, the spectrum of your song. And I'm going to do one other thing really quick before I show you the ozone stuff. So the one difference between how I mixed this before and how it's mixed now, like this change isn't actually in the final track. I'm actually even recording this after it's gone up. So pretty much what this is doing, what I do differently is before I had boosted the volume in my multiband compressors so that iZotope Ozone, which is an excellent plugin, you could have gotten it free a little while ago. But I was boosting it so that it pretty much just leveled everything out at 1.0 exactly. And that is bad practice because that can actually lead to a lot of gain reduction and a lot of clarity being lost. So don't do that. Instead, leave the output gain at 0 for this, and then if you have iZotope Ozone, use the Master Assistant, set the intensity to high and destination to streaming because it's YouTube, etc., etc. And this will give you a good place to start. I hardly ever change anything afterwards. If I do change anything, it's that I'm using the stereo imager. But other than that, there really isn't anything else that I add. And this is iZotope Ozone Elements 9, by the way. Probably should have mentioned that initially. But pretty much what that'll do is it'll give you a nice gain boost, and it'll sound tight. If you don't have iZotope Ozone, that can be a real lifesaver. iZotope Ozone is excellent. That's pretty much it for that. And with that, you get mixing and mastering done. I hope that was at least somewhat informative and helpful. But anyway, after this, it comes to exporting your track. So what you do is you go find the button that says export or mix down or whatever, and you press export. Now I'm not going, well, you press export audio, I think it is. Audio mix down is for Cubase. You can find whatever it is elsewhere. Now, these settings probably mean nothing to you initially, so I'm going to give you what I would suggest. For file format, and that's all that you need, everything that's in here, like everything that you need to change is just in here. Export it as a WAV file or a .wav file. That will be the best. The sample rate, you're going to have to look on your computer for the sample rate, and the way that you can do that, if I can remember specifically how, if you're on Windows 10, right-click down here, go Sound Settings, click Device Properties, and then Additional Device Properties, and that should be on your output. So Device Properties on the output, and then Additional Device Properties, and that should take you here. And then go to Advanced, and this is the number that you're looking for, right here. Depending on what number is shown here, whether it be 44,100 or 48,000, that is what you're looking for specifically. 24-bit 48,000 is optimal. If you can go higher, like if your speakers support that, if your or if your computer supports that, then absolutely go higher. But 24-bit 48K is roughly optimal. If you're in 16-bit 44-100, 44.1K, then that's fine. The only reason that I suggest you look for these numbers is because whatever number shows here, i.e. 48K or 44.1K, is the exact file that you, like the exact same sample rate that you want to export here. So, as we just saw, my sample rate is 48,000 hertz. So I'm going to export at 48,000 hertz. For bit depth, I don't know what that does. So I just export it as 38-bit float, and that's about it. So with that, we're going to go back to a few weeks ago or a few days ago when I shot the editing portion of this video, showing you guys how I do my video editing. I'm fairly sure I did a terrible job of that too, but what can you do? So we'll get to that, and I guess that's going to be it from future me. So take it away, past me or whatever. Alright, so now let's get to editing. Let me get OBS up. Video editing is a longer process. It's usually, well, it's not usually the longest part of doing videos like this, but it does definitely take a while if you're not used to it. So, I am going to be editing in Adobe Premiere Pro. That's just the way that I'm comfortable with doing it. You could theoretically make a music video using Windows Movie Maker. It's insanely difficult, and I don't recommend it. Seriously, if you're going to be making a music video, invest in something that can do like proper video editing, whether it be Premiere Pro or After Effects or Vegas, whatever. Read about both Premiere Pro and any other video editors that you can find in order to make a decision. I've even used Power Director is what it's called. Power Director in the past. I think that's what it's called anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to import our footage and everything else. If you have a computer that doesn't have an SD card reader, which there are some out there, mine doesn't, you can get an external card reader, something like this, and then you can import the footage through that. I recommend putting all of your footage into a folder instead of just having it on your computer. Put it into a separate folder, like create a folder that's like for exported videos, and within that folder put in the SD card files, etc., etc. Also, if you have something that can make it create a folder within your project, if you can find a way to make folders to store stuff, then create folders within your projects. I've got one here that just has all the video files, and then I don't have many audio files, so there's no point in doing that. Okay, we're going to start by dragging the song here. Now we have it there. That bass is cool. Okay, so we're going to import these one file at a time. And if you do live recordings like I do, it'll probably take you multiple takes. So what you want to do is when you've imported the file, how long is this? A little over 3 minutes. When you've imported the file, scrub through and look for a point when you lean over to restart any recordings. That'll be the sign that it's the beginning of a recording. There's no way. There is a way. Oh, I guess it is. Okay. I misunderstood how long that was going to be. Okay, it's a little bit faster, so we're going to move this ahead a little bit. Again, still a little too fast. Conveniently, you can hear the metronome, so that makes lining this up easier. There we go, that's what we're looking for. You can tell how stressed I was doing this. I had to do this recording in 2 takes, didn't I? It's a little bit delayed, so we're gonna have to move it back a tiny bit from that spot. Okay, you go down there. It is still a little bit too far behind. That's about where we want it. God, I was tired, you could tell. There's no energy in this. There was 0 energy in that whatsoever. That was awful. But I can't undo it now. I have to keep the take. Next take would be the bass. Did I do any punch-ins on, like, did I punch in anything, like, on the video? Again, a little far ahead, so we're going to move it back just a bit, maybe to about there. This is by far the weakest performance I've given. Learn hotkeys when you're editing, by the way. Hotkeys will greatly, like, up the speed. Alright, so we have all the footage imported. Oh god. Okay, so when you're cutting, be sure to cut to the beat. So, be listening to the beat, be listening to the pulse, and when you're cutting, cut to that pulse. It's a little more awkward if you don't cut to that pulse. That also includes cutting to, like, where notes are. So if there's a part of a lead that you want to cut to, you can cut it to that part of the lead. The only thing is it can be, like, at the beginning of the phrase, or at some point in the middle of the phrase after a long drawn out note. You just have to decide very carefully. I need to get way more into these recordings. Like, you can tell I'm getting way into it now. Also, don't be afraid to overlap, like, frames. For example, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take these 2 clips, which would be the lead guitar, like the actual main lead guitar, and the harmony guitar, and I'm going to take the harmony part, and I'm going to scale it down to 50%. And I change this to 50. It's scaled to exactly a quarter of the screen. Also, if you're going to be continuing with that same theme, put them, like, put the video files that you're going to be using to make those edits, put them, like, above where, like, the main timeline is, because you should be using the first video track instead of scattering them all over the place. Recognize what the names of your, like, the video clips are. They will be named randomly, but, well, what seems like randomly anyway. Also, this is a habit that I myself need to get out of. When there's harmony parts, both guitars don't need to be on screen at the same time. You can have just one of them to make them, like, singled out. I love that. That could be a good thumbnail face. That's actually kind of creepy. I think that should be the main lead guitar. Okay. And like that. There we go. We pretty much have an edit. That's the thing, we can get rid of those. Yeah, I didn't say much during that, I got really into it. I get really into editing and stuff like that. I think the actual video editing is the part that I have the most fun and the most issues with. That is pretty much a walkthrough of how it is that I went about doing the main editing part. There is one final thing that we need to do. Well, a few final things that we need to do to this. We're going to start by adding a color matte. Which is basically, it's going to be a vignette. And that's how you spell vignette. So when we drag this over the whole project, you're not going to see anything, basically because it's just a black image. So what we're going to do, I think what we want is the circle. And now we have a white circle, which is not good. It's just a white circle. So we want to make it black, and then click on this invert circle button here, which makes it look like that. Now we can increase and lower the radius however we want. I'm going to have to add another one of those. Because I have a preset saved for this. Oh, it's just there. Okay. Okay, so, okay, I'm just being dumb. That's what's happening. Okay. Okay, I figured it out. I remember how I did this. There's just a feather thing that's built into the actual, like, circle part, which just looks like that. And I can invert it to show you it looks like that, which is great. So now we have a vignette, which basically softens the edges of the video, creates a little bit more of a music video look. And finally, the last few touches I need to add are to cut off this ending because it's a bit long. Find the point when, like, it goes completely silent, which is about there, and fade everything out. And then add in, whoops, that's not what I want to do. We want to add in the end card. Christ, that's basic. Also, while you're scrubbing, okay, once you finish it, scrub through, like, wash the whole thing and decide on a clip that you may want to be your thumbnail image. That is a good thumbnail image, and I'll tell you why. Okay, hang on. Let's see here. Puzzle swap. In Premiere, there's a little button down here that lets you create a screenshot. Pretty much when you press it. And you can create a screenshot of, like, that specific frame. Anyway, that pretty much does it for this. This means that now we can export it. Press File, then Export, then Media, and choose a place to put it. Export it as an H.264, that is basically an MP4 file. Don't export it as an MPEG-4, because that's not quite the same thing. So export it as an H.264. If you were recording in 720 or anything below 1080, export in that specific, like, size. If you're exporting in, well, if you have a video that's in 720p and you export at 480, it can be a bit blurry, because it's trying to create data that just straight isn't there. So, export at what your recording thing was, your recording resolution, and also at whatever your recording frame rate was. Mine was at 60, yours could be at 30, or if you're in PAL territories, it could be 25 or 50. Or if you have one of those super high-end cameras, then you can export it at hundreds. Depends. Anyway, I don't really mess with anything else. This is usually my settings. They just stay like this. I have all that, and it could be 255 megabytes. Export it. Cool. So So this is usually the point when I get up to go to the bathroom if I decide I need to. Because I'm going to be getting to the thumbnail later. So you pretty much just have to wait for this to be finished. I'm going to actually take a break and we'll come back and do thumbnails. So see you in just a second. I'll also cover uploading. That'll be done as well. So see you in a bit. So here's how we're going to make our thumbnail. We're going to take the file, the screenshot that you took from your video, and it looks like that. You don't necessarily have to create thumbnails this way, but it is helpful to have stuff like this. For me, I have some custom thumbnail art, which is these horns, create text, puzzle swap. We're going to put that right there, but you can't see the swap part because of my windowsill. So what we're going to do, add in a stroke, and a drop shadow. And the last thing that we're going to need to get is some clip art. So yeah, find yourself some clip art somehow related to the game that you've done a cover of. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the crop tool, and videos, thumbnails, we can grab our me character, who I fucked up. Great. So, if you export this at full resolution, believe it or not, not Nintendo, what the fuck am I talking about? YouTube doesn't support it, so export it at 1280 by 720 instead. Unless you're already recording at 1280 by 720, in which case the image will just be 1280 by 720. Upload video. Okay, so we do have some composers. Alright, let's get to uploading a video. The new YouTube Studio is fine. Full stop. So go to where you've saved the video. Which, it's not there. It's here. I've got a template for how I upload stuff, but it can look something similar to this. It can also get very, very long. Puzzle swap. Street pass. Me plaza cover. I'm gonna have to change some details. This will be the LTD M17 7-string. Microphone, audio, I can spell, Audio Technica AT2020. It's hard to tell though, actually. Unknown composer / uncredited. Unknown / uncredited. Okay, so now time to write the description. God, why does it do this to me? I hate this fucking thing sometimes. I will be brutally honest with you. The way that, like, it spaces stuff, it's annoying. I chose this thumbnail specifically, by the way, because I'm looking directly at the puzzle swap text, so that way it kind of, you know, brings attention to it. That's pretty much all of the tags I'm going to need. Tags are important because it pretty much brings more attention to the stuff that you do. Anyway, we can now add an end screen. I wrote that song, by the way, in case you didn't know. And we're going to make it unlisted because we're really far ahead. Like, I'm recording this video, like the end of this video, on the 1st of July. The Dragon Roost Island cover hasn't even come out yet. So there you go. The video's there. And now it's on the internet. And that means that this tutorial series is now finished. So, I hope you learned something. I know I was useful in some regards at some points during this. But if you did find some use in this, which I do hope you did in some fashion, well, get to recording yourself, because I want to see a lot of the stuff that you guys come up with if this helped you at all. So, thank you for watching, Dragon Knights. Stay classy, and remember, a dragon is only as strong as you let it be. I'll see you in the skies.